day to you fine folks. Welcome back to the Homesteads and Homeschools podcast. Today's episode 18, which means, of course, the show notes are going to be at homesteadsandhomeschools.com/018. So my guests today, yes, that's plural, you heard that correctly, are Shane and Meredith Hazel. Shane is one of the co-hosts of the Rebellion Pod, and his wife, Meredith, comes on more than occasionally for some hosting duties. So I thought it'd be fun to have them on. They are very liberty-minded, and Shane is a veteran, and Meredith is a former school teacher, public school teacher. I really wanted to have them on to talk about homeschooling, and we did, and we had a wonderful conversation. It took a while to make our schedules line up, but it was worth it. I think you will see. After the show, I'm not going to talk about anything today, and that's because it is a long interview, and for the sake of time, I thought I'd shorten it, trying to cut down the length on some of these episodes. So, but if you still want to hear me talk about some environmental issues, you can check out Free Market's Green Earth this Thursday. Me and Nikki P will be talking a little bit about some mountains and some dead people. So come check that out. You can plug that into any podcatcher. If you haven't subscribed to this show yet, go ahead and do that now. Leave a review over on iTunes if you haven't, or Stitcher. We're on Stitcher now. Also got the YouTube running. So if that's your thing, you can find us over there. Just search for Homesteads and Homeschools, and it should pop up. I think that's all for now. So let's go plant those liberty seeds with the Hazels. So today we got two guests, Shane Hazel and his wife, Meredith. Shane is the host of the Rebellion podcast. It's kind of new, I guess, but it is growing exponentially. It's just booming right along. And if you haven't listened to it, you should. And his wife, Meredith, is with us as well. They homeschool, and Meredith was actually a public school teacher for a little while before she decided to, I guess, stay home with the kiddos. So welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for coming on and doing this.
Ben, pleasure to be on, man. And really, I'm sorry we couldn't make this happen earlier. I know we've been trying left and right, and schedules are just crazy with kids and life and making podcasts.
I hear that.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks. So, growing up, were either of you guys homeschooled, or did you guys just kind of do the public school thing coming up?
Government indoctrination centers for me, man.
Yeah,
right.
Public school here too. Never anything else.
All right. And was it something coming up? You were like, this is I don't really like this. Public school is kind of, I'm not doing anything. And you thought maybe when you grew up you'd homeschool your kids. Was that ever an idea, or was that kind of?
I will be honest. I never ever really thought I would be a homeschooling mother of 3. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a public school teacher, and that's kind of what I had in my mind. So no, I had no plans to homeschool. I don't know about Shane.
I lived next to homeschoolers, and I thought that they were some of the nicest, weirdest people I'd ever met. And I was jealous a lot of times of them. They would be out playing at odd times. If I was, for some reason I was home or sick, and the kids were just outside. You're like, what the hell is this about? Like this, you just get to do a course and then like hang out outside or do whatever you want. I mean, and this is back in the early 80s, so there wasn't I guess there were video games, but these kids weren't playing video games. And I mean, they were well read. They were, they were extremely articulate. Maybe, and I mean, they were good friends too. I mean, they're great people, but I kind of knew growing up something wasn't right. I mean, my brother, he happens to be part of that 6% that's left-handed out there, and just kind of sees the world from a different perspective. And being as close as I was to him and seeing just how much he loathed school. I mean, from day one, I remember getting called down to his kindergarten class because he was crying. And he wasn't an unhappy kid by any stretch of the imagination, but it was from there until the day he graduated, he just could not stand school. And I wasn't that person. I kind of just went along, got through it, and did pretty well without much effort at all, which I guess that kind of says something too. It's like, if you're not really trying and you get through it, was it really worth it?
Yeah.
So no, it wasn't until much later on that I even considered homeschooling our kids.
Mm-hmm. I think once we had them and once I was at home,
mm-hmm.
I kind of wanted them to just be at home with me, and I didn't want to go back to work, and it just kind of fell into our laps, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
It really did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it's funny because I went to school to be a teacher as well. I taught for a couple of years, and it was one of those things that I never really thought about homeschooling. It was just kind of, why would you do that? And then here you are down the road.
It's all there for you. Why are you doing it at home?
Yeah, and lo and behold, you end up doing it, and who knows why, right?
Yeah.
And you even pay for it, for God's sakes. I mean, you even pay for it when you're not sending your kids there.
Yeah,
right.
No, it's homeschooling is not cheap. It's it does have a price tag, and you're paying tuition for it, whether it is for you think about it in terms of supplies or paying the state to fund the public school. You're still paying for school, whether you use it or not. So. But what was your teaching experience like? Was that something you enjoyed, or was it something that kind of
in public school?
Yeah.
I did enjoy it. I was fortunate to be in pretty good schools. I had good principals. You hear horror stories about administration being weird or mean. I never had that experience. I had really good kids, really good classes. Overall, I really enjoyed it a lot. My first year, I literally didn't know that I was supposed to follow, specific standards that obviously I know now. And I just kind of taught what I felt third graders needed to be learning.
Yeah.
We met as a team of teachers, probably once a week. And we would kind of plan similar lessons and be on the same topic. So I guess in a way I was following what needed to be followed, but I totally did my own thing. Every single one of those kids passed. That was like the first year that they had to pass the standardized test to be promoted. They all passed. They were perfectly fine. I wasn't going off a checklist. I never did any test prep. And they've all graduated, and a lot of them are in college. I mean, they're very successful students. So I don't know. Yeah. I had a very good, positive experience as a public school teacher. I worked a lot. I will say.
You worked.
Had I, looking back, like, I worked too much, but at the same time, I liked what I was doing. If we had kids at that point, I couldn't have put in what I put in to the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, we were getting up.
Now he's looking at me like you worked all the time.
I want to give Meredith a lot of credit. I mean, I knew grown up teachers took, especially the good ones. The good ones put in the time to make it fun and interesting, and no slight to the teachers that are out there that are busting their humps, in spite of the system that's in front of them, the framework that they have to work in. But to brag on Meredith a little bit, those kids that first year that graduated, a lot of them graduated top of their class, and I'm talking like the valedictorian, the salutatorian. I don't know, that doesn't mean a whole lot to a lot of people in the Liberty crowd, but it's one of those things where when they graduated, they called Meredith or sent her, the specific invite to invite her to that graduation. And I mean, I imagine that first that first year when you were outside of the public indoctrination curriculum where you were really kind of doing your own thing, you made that lasting impression. And I mean, I remember teachers like that were just head and shoulders above the other teachers because they did put in the effort. I mean, waking up at 4 a.m., coming home at 6, 7 o'clock at night. And
did I used to wake up at 4 a.m.?
Oh, yeah.
What?
Yeah, especially when we would drive in together.
I guess, yeah, at that point I was living like an hour away from work, but oh my goodness.
Yeah, we were young and full of energy. It was crazy.
Blocked it out, huh?
Yeah. That's mental repression at the best.
It's funny, it is one of those things. We kind of, I think the Liberty crowd does rag on teachers a little bit and that sort of demographic. At the same time, there are some teachers out there that, poke holes in things. And I remember, one of my teachers in high school really making me question things. What do we know about George Washington, right? He cut down a cherry tree, right? There was no cherry tree. That's a lie. That's a myth. And
what are we talking about?
Why do we have myths like that? Why do we, teach us these things? And what does that tell us about, our culture and our belief system? And you have teachers like that out there, and, they're not all bad, but at the same time, if everything was privatized, what would that look like? So
I like the idea of not at least not coercion and forced participation. I like the idea of a system where at least people get to choose what's right for their kids. And I mean, I know that's not even a perfect world either,
right.
But I think what we've got today in terms of how much administration there is over, professionally trained teachers, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, when we look at, the teaching process and what kids are assigned to read across an entire state even, right? Like you have a grade level curriculum for a state a lot of times. And I don't know how much the federal, government gets involved in that, but if you've got people all learning the same thing all the time, what a boring society. I mean, and if it's wrong and and it's based in this, this collectivism idea, you're just breeding these NPCs, for a lack of a better term, these drones that will, regurgitate until they're blue in the face, go to their graves doing exactly what the state's trained and indoctrinated them to do.
Yeah, I had Arvin on last week, Arvin Bora, and that was something kind of came up a little bit. The education system has just kind of flatlined. It's remained the same for how many years, going on decades, that really...
Well, we'd be real lucky if it had remained the same, right? I mean, if it remained the same, I think we were like number 3 in the world in terms of education in
when?
In the 1970s.
Right? Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, in the 1970s when Jimmy Carter federalized...
Is that weird that that's a stat I don't know as somebody that was trained to be a teacher?
Well,
I mean...
I think it's funny, too, that, when you mention names like Thorndike and Dewey and von Humpf and those guys that were the Prussian... what's the midwives, the Prussian midwives to the education, the school system. Like they don't teach that. They don't teach, where school came from, and this, magical nonsense that we talk about, at the beginning of every day where we, pledge allegiance to a magical sky cloth. Like it's absolutely... It's crazy, but the thing is it does its for the state, it does its job,
right?
It's nuts.
It does that for sure. So, what? I guess you said it kind of fell into your lap that you ended up homeschooling. Was there a point then when you made that decision? I mean, was it you're still out on maternity leave and you decided, or is it getting...
Well, so our oldest is they're all summer babies, but essentially we had Jackson in July. So school's not in session at that time. And in the county I was in, I didn't have to take my maternity leave until the first day of school started.
Right.
So I kind of got extra time with him, which put me back, taking as many days as I could. I think I would have been back like right around Halloween. And I literally went in, I think we had already decided before the school year even started that I wasn't going back, but decided to take the time because I had, paid money into having leave or whatever. But I went back in and I told my principal, I'm not going to be returning. And she kind of already had that idea in her mind. They hired somebody that was a certified teacher as opposed to just a long-term sub because they kind of knew that I wasn't coming back without me saying anything. But then fast forward, I guess we never, when they turn like 2.5, 3, everyone's like, oh, they have to go to preschool. Like we never took them to preschool at the little church preschools. We never did that. Not that that's a bad thing. Like I think those are the years that maybe going to some sort of little school program is, good for them to be around other little kids. But yeah, we didn't do preschool. We didn't do pre-K. We just kind of decided to do it.
Kind of getting back to his question, though, in terms of the conversation that we had, and
I don't remember it.
I had to jog my memory a little bit and make sense.
I don't remember much of anything.
How the hell did you get out of working? No. No.
How can I not go back to work?
I think it boiled down to, and correct me if I'm wrong, if this stirs something loose, is that when we looked at what childcare cost, I mean, quality childcare is not cheap by any stretch of the imagination.
For just me to go back to work.
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't worth it.
It wasn't worth her, working in public education. And
we would have spit it all back into childcare.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have been around your kid.
Right.
And you would have been in the hands of...
We would have been sick all the time
possibly
from germs.
Yeah, a possible stranger or something, and you're like, yeah, let's just try this. And it was a daunting decision, I think. I mean, when you go from a double, income into a...
Not that teacher salary is, something to write home, but it helped.
It helps.
If we had that now, I'd be like, oh, that's awesome. But yeah, I think we figured out we'd be maybe bringing home a couple $100 from my paycheck after dealing with childcare costs and taxes
and gas and
then, but after that, I don't remember. I think we just did it. We didn't even really talk about homeschooling, did we? Just like, oh, that'll be the next thing. We'll just homeschool.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it boiled down to. I think you were, there was some apprehension there too, like. All right, I know I'm a public school teacher, but being here and doing this way, can I do this? And you're I don't know. There's so much stigma around homeschooling by society.
But also still even by us too. Like we say stuff all the time. Like our new phrase that we just came up with.
Oh, what?
Your homeschool showing.
Yeah, your homeschool show. So
some random thing that the kids just don't get, and like everyone's kind of looking at them, like why doesn't your child understand this? I'm like, it's their homeschool showing. Like it's funny.
It's not a bad thing. For sure.
I mean, everybody knows that there's some things.
There's
sometimes there's some quirks. Yeah.
Now we've noticed that as well. I think there's definitely, and it's funny because most of the kids that they run with are homeschoolers as well. And so sometimes it's not as pronounced, but then when they get in the bigger, well, that's okay though. I mean, those are, it's growing up. That's life. And
exactly.
Were you homeschooled, Ben?
I was not. No, my mom, my mother, another parent talked to her about trying to get me and 2 other students out to homeschool us like together. And I think we were in like 2nd or 3rd grade, and my mom and one of the other mothers decided not to, and so we went in the public school, and the other kid came out, and I think we were in like 5th grade when he came back to public school, but they put him in like 9th grade or something. He was like, he was like super advanced. It was crazy, and like, so yeah. But that was
trying to get beat up every day.
Oh my goodness!
And it was one of those things. I think my mother's a teacher, or well, she just retired, but she taught special ed. And, when she found out we were homeschooling, we were going to homeschool, there was some apprehension on her part too, and as she's come down and she's visited, because they're, live upstate New York, and she's helped, homeschool a couple days. We'll, let her do things. And she's very impressed with, what homeschooling actually is. And it's not this image that you conjure up in your mind when you think of homeschooling. We have this stigma around it, this cultural idea of what homeschooling is and what homeschoolers look like. And it may be true for some people, but for a lot of people, it's not. It's going to be different. Every home you go to is going to run their program a little differently.
Well, I mean, and here's the crazy part is throughout history, most schooling was done at home, and you look at some of the magnificent minds, of the past, and you're just sitting there going, man, if kids were more in tune with books and the ability to sit around at night quietly and consume, other walks of life and different personalities and life lessons that are really condensed. And that's what books are. A lot of times there are lessons learned, there's stories of character arcs, and natural truths all rolled into this really convenient personal package that if you read enough of those, you get this worldly experience. And I think that's one of the things that I've seen more so since becoming a homeschool family, because now, like as soon as my kids get in bed at night, if they're not just dog tired, I mean, they're cuddled up with books, man. I got to go up in my oldest son's bunk bed once in a while and clean that thing out because he's got so many books up there. Yeah. And it's fantastic to me. I was not that kid.
You weren't?
No, I mean, if I read when I was younger, I would fall asleep, especially if I did it on my back. These guys will stay up with a headlamp on and just wear themselves out.
Yeah, we got my son like a book light for, I think it was Christmas or something, and it was probably the worst thing we could have done for his sleep. It's like, I mean, he'll stay up till 9:30, 10:30 sometimes just reading books, and it's like, wow.
And then you have to stop yourself because there obviously are way worse things that they could be doing than reading books. You're like, sure, read that book for 10 more minutes.
And if that's the nightly habit of
that's a good habit
my kids, rather than getting canned out there, drinking too much booze, then
gotta finish reading my book.
Yeah, all right, no problem.
Yep, but it is though. When you look back, I think at schools, you go back to like one room schoolhouses, and what was it? I mean, you had the stratification of age groups and the different experiences, and you brought that all to the table, and that was shared, and it's the same thing you get through reading books and experiencing other parts of life. That's how you learn. And sure, you can learn from sitting at a desk and memorizing facts and doing that sort of thing, but to really put them into practice, I think you have to have some idea of how to do that. And I don't think you can get that just from, sitting at a desk in a public school for 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day.
Yeah, that's a lot of time.
I think Meredith made a comment a while back about, how unlikely it is, especially once you leave, the public indoctrination system, to work in a place that is homogenous in age. It's crazy.
Yeah, you have to be able to, work and communicate with people that are not your age and not.
Well, and that's the thing that you hit on there, Ben, is like when you're talking about that one room schoolhouse and the stratification of ages like that, where as a child progresses through a system like that, what they've done is gone from student, to more of an advanced student to a teacher type role. So that not only, and that's one thing, from my Marine Corps experience, when when we would talk about the learning process, it was always learn one, do one, show one. And that way you have to become a master of whatever technique or skill set that you're learning so that you can pass that on. And so, by the time kids get out of that type of schooling system, they're actually able to teach. When you get out of public school, I don't know that I ever had a public speaking course. I don't know that I ever had a course where I was taught how to teach. And
no.
that's critically important. I mean, to think that 18-year-olds can't teach, that's a weird thing to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to go off and vote pretty soon. You're already driving. The fact that you don't have any, education, specifically, on learning how to teach other people how to either think or do things, that's a failure. That's a huge failure.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's, better than any test is to be able to communicate a skill to someone else. I can write anything down on paper, but teaching someone how to actually do that is a huge difference. But so I don't know, I guess you guys just started homeschooling and it kind of plopped in there. Kindergarten rolled around and I don't know, you just filed the paperwork and called it a day. Is that pretty much how that went?
Yeah.
I guess. Nice.
Pretty much. And I mean, honestly, they're all summer birthdays.
Yeah.
Especially our last one is really close to the cutoff age for a grade, the appropriate grade
Right.
level. I don't think we would have, held any of them back. I think they're all really capable and they were ready to start learning. But I liked that I could kind of control and do what we wanted to do as far as what we were learning. So
and she makes it sound much more simple than not that it was, that the effort that she puts into it too, and I definitely credit her because she does, Sunday nights, man, she sits down at the table and writes out her lesson plans, just like if she was if she was back in the brick and mortar school like that. And that type of dedication, maybe I could if I really wanted to. I don't want to do that. I think that's an amazing, an amazing gift that she has. It, contributes highly, but I don't know that you have to be that person either.
no, I do it more so because there are 3 of them now. Like back when it was just me and Jackson, it was so much easier to just kind of open and go. And I teach them while the other 2 were napping, and I didn't really have to get things totally prepared. But with 3 of them and having to pull 3 different assignments for each subject, and it's just easier if it's all kind of ready to go.
Yeah,
So
I hear
what
that
I do.
100%. We had 2, and we were homeschooling the oldest one, and our younger daughter would go to like a preschool at the church, 3 days a week, 4 days a week for I think it was like 3.5, 4 hours or something. We'd go to the library and do our school then, and then we ended up adopting 2 more that were younger, so we got 2, 4, 6, and 8. And
Oh, wow.
it like there's now all of a sudden, before I could just kind of like pull things out and do it, and now there's so much more planning involved when
And you also, like with little ones like that, you have to at least have something they could be doing that doesn't totally require you to be there.
which is difficult
At all
at best.
times. Yeah,
Those
exactly.
things, Legos are only fun for so long,
Yeah. Play-Doh only stays one color for so long too.
Yes. So, what do you use a curriculum then, or do you kind of write your own? Do you use stuff from school?
I wouldn't say that I've like written anything out on my own. I just pick and choose what seems to be working. I've used quite a bit of different curriculum, especially with our oldest. So what I feel like will work with the younger two, I've tried to use the same stuff, but I'm realizing that that's not always going to be the case.
Right.
I don't like the big box ones where like you get the grade level set, because I just feel like it's, every kid's different, and that's why we're doing this, because I can choose what they specifically need for their learning style.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've used a bunch of different stuff.
You said it the other night too, and I thought it was kind of a really great analogy when,
The suit.
Yeah. So she was saying that, I guess, when you gotta go to a public education, like there are some years where you're gonna get like a suit, right, that kind of fits pretty good, and then sometimes you're gonna get a suit that kind of not so great.
Maybe you need to lose some weight.
But if you're doing homeschool the right way, that education is a custom suit, and it fits like nothing else in this world. And I think that's the genius of homeschooling is, just because my oldest is going to learn great out of this type of program or curriculum, doesn't mean that my next two are going to have any interest in that whatsoever. It's all presentation. It's amazing, how different minds are, and to be able to feed them, the way they learn is really the gift.
It is, and it's interesting when you start schooling more than one or two that you notice that, and you notice that they not only do they learn differently, they learn different things. The same thing that you can present either child, and they'll come up with different facts out of it.
Different.
Yes.
Especially if you got a lefty in there.
Do you have any left-handed children?
We do. Our middle child is a lefty on top of being a middle child. So he's amazing. I mean, it's cool though, and anybody that's out there that's listening to this, if you haven't really experienced left-handed people, and I'm not saying that they're all different, not by any stretch of the imagination, but if you didn't grow up with it, if you're not used to it,
or if you're not left-handed yourself.
Yeah, and the thing, I'm not left-handed, but
either am I.
I grew up with a very left-handed brother, and to see the struggles between him and the very right-handed, symmetric type thinking that there is in right-handed people versus the very left-handed abstract art, centered, music-centered type brain, the conflict that naturally exists between those two, hemispheres. Mm-hmm. It's really nice to be the adult in the situation where when you do see the left-handed, that you not only accept it, but now you're pushing it and trying to help it excel in what it wants to do, rather than just
instead of putting it out,
fighting it the entire time and creating frustration and angst and this feeling that this isn't right for whatever reason.
Yeah, and again that boils down, I think, when you homeschool, you can do that. You can allow that to flourish and feed it. I mean, it wasn't here, but when I was teaching I taught in Korea for a year, and I remember, I think it was like, I don't know how true this is, but the teachers would tell me, I think, like being left-handed was bad luck, essentially. And there was, of course, I was teaching kids that were, I don't know, I think they were preschool age. They were probably like 3, 4, 5. And I was teaching them how to write, basic and write their name, and trying to correct kids they were left-handed and try to force them to write right-handed. And it was just like, it was tragic, and I mean, our schools aren't that way, right? We don't force kids to write with their right hand and do that stuff. But at the same time, you're kind of forcing them into a certain paradigm that might not necessarily fit them. It's beyond the right hand, left hand thing. I mean, you have kids that, you look at, Edison, Thomas Edison. If he went to school now, he would be doped up on all sorts of pills,
right,
and ADD medicine.
Still be, I don't know, living in the dark, right? It's crazy. But I don't know.
Yeah, Tesla too. There, right? It's like these. Yeah, the people that change the world, and we talk about this all the time. Is there's a great saying out there that the world needs who you were born to be, and that everybody has this innate gift inside them to give to this world, and if that isn't fostered from a very early age to where somebody can hone an idea or a craft or a skill set, man, what we're doing is we're depriving our cultures and humanity of advancement. And that's what, you reference, Korea, and you see, I've spent a lot of time in Singapore and the Asian culture, and it is very much, this is tradition and this is the way it's done, and you're gonna comply with it. We're not that rigid.
I actually have a friend that her daughter was in kindergarten and was told she could not write left-handed.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not kidding.
That's kind of the way it used to be, I think.
No, it was like 3 years ago.
Like here
Wow.
in Georgia,
Forsyth County,
in the States anyway. Wow.
Whew. She homeschools now. She did 1 year. She did kindergarten, and then she pulled her out. But yeah, she was told not to write left-handed. It was wrong.
That's crazy. We have the little boy we adopted is left-handed, and he is I don't know if it's left-handed or it's just him, but he is musically like, I mean,
that's ours.
He was
Yes,
crawling around, and there'd be music playing, and he'd stop, and his start swinging, and his head going back and forth. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, that's my middle child. I mean, when I ask about, what's your favorite part in a movie, and, my oldest, who's right-handed and very symmetric, he'll tell me about the part, the scene. And when I ask, ask my lefty, he tells me about his favorite song in the movie. And, I love that.
And our oldest is like, no, that's not what he asked.
No, you don't understand. That's
wrong.
His favorite part.
Oh, man. That's good. It'll be fun. It's fun to watch them grow up and really be in touch with them, and be allowed to really be a part of that and see them thrive. But were you always sort of liberty-minded? Was that always something that kind of played into your role?
I was gonna just let Meredith go first, and she pointed at me
to Shane
over here. Short answer, no. I was a neocon, man, and I'll tell you, like, so much a neocon that the government indoctrination worked so well on me that when 9/11 happened, within, I don't know, a couple days, I was 3 years into my degree. I quit college, signed up for the Marine Corps, got into force reconnaissance, and went around the world twice. And to this day, I couldn't tell you why we were there. And that's really where the light bulb went on, or at least I took my first red pill and said, what the hell is wrong with what we're, why are we doing what we're doing? I think that was the question.
Right.
And as that festered and I began to itch, that festering question that I had, what I started to uncover, man, just blew me away to the point where, I had to rethink everything. I had to rethink, from the time you step into that public indoctrination place all the way through boot camp and everything that you're told. I mean, every higher education, and everything. So, yeah, I mean, it was. I had to do a complete reset. Control Alt Delete and really start from scratch. That little longer answer, but no, I was not a Liberty person for sure.
I wasn't at all. Just being honest here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not even in my radar. I just kind of always followed along.
I mean, you probably were like me. You didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I was. You need to be supportive of the troops and patriotic, and I love America. I don't know.
Love Lamp.
I I learn things every single day from Shane, and especially from listening to the podcast. And I'm still learning things.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful that I have it to listen to feel like I can somewhat carry on a conversation with him sometimes.
Well, and that's this idea, there's same way that a lot of times we'll go after teachers in the system, where a lot of times people grow up and they never, ever, ever hear the message of liberty. Mm-hmm. I kind of got the cliff notes through school, like, the Star Spangled Awesomeness of America, right? But when you actually get to the practical application, that entire piece is missing. Like, if you're looking at a program, the program doesn't work if that piece is missing. And once I started to see, the history and have it all make sense and really not, 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue kind of BS that you get, but to really learn about the character. And that's kind of where I discovered character arc, right? Where you have just your everyday people who do extraordinary things in the face of complete adversity, and to see people John Otis or James Otis Jr. and some of the guys more on the anti-federalist sides like Patrick Henry and Samuel Adams, and to see what they put themselves through, the ridicule, just the absolute exposure, the risk that they took in terms of talking about liberty, to see the actual dynamic in history, how people got along, how they reacted to certain events. When I figured out that we had just kind of whitewashed history and made it boring on purpose, and that when I rediscovered what it really was, that's what kind of catapulted me into, holy crap, we've got a world out here that we've been denied, on purpose and for a reason. Because if you've got people who free people will stand up and demand their rights, and that's not good for governance. And so I learned very quickly that a school that's put on by the government and liberty are always in conflict. And so you can't have government in charge of education, because government will push down liberty first and foremost to support itself. Right. And it's been,
makes sense.
It's been an evolution
for government's sake.
Yeah. And when you look at the whole system, it makes sense why they do what they do. Right. And if you go back to like Dewey and Thorndike and Van Hoem, like, these guys were the authors, and you look at their writings and you go, yeah, man, they're, what they wanted to do in terms of, molding docile minds into their heart's content. They've mission accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah. I am there with you 100%. So is that something, I guess, it had to be on your mind to some degree when you guys decided to homeschool, or was it something that kind of came in afterwards that you kind of started to see more of it?
The liberty?
Yeah, more of the sort of what a public school kind of is. I've always been very hesitant on what to teach the kids in regards to history, because I don't think I learned anything that was accurate. So I've always kind of turned to Shane, and like, I've brought you different curriculum. I actually just did it the other night.
Yeah.
And nothing has really stood out to us as far as like something to follow. So I always just assumed he would kind of take the reins and teach the kids what they need to know. But yes, definitely that in mind. I didn't want, that might be like one of the main things I didn't want them to get.
Right.
From school, right?
Math is math. I know it's all weird now at school with Common Core, but I mean, they're going to learn some math at school. They're going to learn how to speak properly at school. But like, I mean, I would hope. But something like, basic concepts of civics and economics and history, and it never felt like it was right. And I guess it's a good thing I knew that.
Yeah, to question it, to be able to question. I think,
but at the same time, I didn't want to be the person in charge of selecting what to share with the kids, because I felt like he knew more than I did. But
there you go. I mean, that's a cool thing. You also have this ability to play within your strengths. Where you have figured out that part of life, where you have figured out, like, listen, this is something that we don't want to teach. That's a good thing. It's like growing up, you take on all these manual labor jobs. I figured out real quick, I don't want to roof houses in the middle of August in Atlanta, right? Like, it's the same thing with education. Like, I know real quick that if it's sitting over here talking about, the redistribution of wealth and holding up.
Like, I actually remember that.
Yeah, like that's
in school.
I don't
like fourth grade.
I need to teach it at some point, but this doesn't need to be held up on a podium as
this great idea.
This great idea that oftentimes is
right.
So it's kind of cool that you are able to kind of rely on each other's strengths and then push the right curriculum.
Yeah, it definitely it puts some of that discretion in your hands, and we're not all experts on things, but there are so many resources out there for you to use and to find and to talk to, and I don't know. I think homeschooling is
it's catching on.
It is, and I think it's getting easier with the internet, and I think it's probably getting better. In the sense
and I think the stigma is finally starting to recede, a little bit here, because God, we had a public school teacher here. Just around the corner at a middle school that I think our kids would go to if they were in public school. Where I think she had a class, of almost 30 kids, and like 2/3 of them were first language was Spanish, right?
Right.
She basically said, I think in a PTA meeting to the parents, like, if I were you, I'd homeschool your kids. Like,
oh yeah, I remember telling you about that. Yeah.
So it is catching on. If you've got people in public education that are talking about, hey man, maybe there's an alternative for you if your students are, your kids aren't doing well here, and with the internet and the resources available, and the ability to just communicate between homeschoolers and meet up and do things together and really, quote unquote, normalize the entire society. I think it's a really neat thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it is. I look forward to it. I think it'll be a good thing to watch and to be a part of as it expands, Well, I've kept you guys for too long. But
no, it's been a really fun conversation, man.
So before I let you go, are you going to run anytime soon? Are you running again?
Am I running for office again? Boy, isn't that the $1 million question?
No. What do you want to plug? Where do you want to tell us to go find your wonderful podcast?
We're running the Rebellion podcast. It's Banks Wise and myself, and Meredith will hop in there for a program like this sometimes, and we're just trying to spread the principles of peace and liberty and free markets. You can find us at rebellionpod.com. You can listen on basically any platform that's out there, from Lisbon to Spotify to iTunes. And other than that, we're trying to grow and do amazingly big things. I don't know that I'm ever running for office again. Really happy behind the microphone, but I will definitely let everybody know that if I get called up to the majors at some point, I'm sure it'll make some headlines.
Yeah,
I don't think you've seen the last of him.
Not to be, we're not being cryptic. Obviously, there's some things happening up here in the Georgia 7th, but I got to tell you, at this point, we haven't made any decisions. I'm definitely leaning towards not.
No, I just mean in the future. I don't think it's going to be a thing that happens too soon in the future. But
I can't
maybe
imagine,
down the line.
I can't imagine even trying to do something like that with,
with children.
The time. I mean, like trying to just do this. Trying to find time at night when kids are down, and it's
find the time.
An hour here, an hour there.
They run in with some request and you're recording.
I gotta poop.
I don't know. That was good, right? It was one that I really enjoyed, and I think, we probably could have kept going for a while. You should really, if you haven't heard the Rebellion Pod, you should really check it out. I have all the links to there in the show notes. Shane is a passionate dude, and it comes through in the podcast, and it's very entertaining, and he and Banks have a wonderful dynamic. So go check that out, and I think that's pretty much it. Come back next week. I will have another guest talking about fermenting food and some natural sort of preservation techniques, something we all need to think about when we're trying to keep our bounty for a little bit longer. So go leave a review. Check out the Patreon if you want, patreon.com/homesteads and homeschools. Check out the show notes, homesteadsandhomeschools.com/018. Find me on Twitter at hsandhspod. Or shoot me an email. I always respond to homesteadsandhomeschools@gmail.com. You can always click through on my Amazon link. It will cost you nothing, but it will give me a small percentage, a small commission, I guess. And, it all kind of adds up and is helpful. And you can find that at homesteadsandhomeschools.com/Amazon. So, without further ado, I'll remind you to get out there, sow those seeds of liberty. We can all reap sheaves of freedom together.
I'm gonna ride a hustler's dream.